All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. This is a warm welcome to those of you who are joining us live and those of you who are watching this after the fact. I have Irina here with me today, and we've had multiple conversations, and they're always enlightening. No pun intended. That was literally the word that just came out. And I'm excited for us to have a conversation like we always do and just let folks join in on that conversation. Sometimes when we're talking, the comments and the questions people pop in don't always feed over. So if you are someone who leaves a comment or a question and we don't get to it while we're talking, we do go and look afterwards. So I don't want anybody to think that we're ignoring you. It's just sometimes the comments don't feed through, and then I end the stream and I see that there were 3 people that left comments. So we will check afterwards and get back to you. But without further ado, I would like to give Irina an opportunity to tell everybody a little bit about who she is and what she does. And then, as always, we'll chat and just see where the conversation takes us.
Yes, I'm so excited. We always have conversations, and even when we don't record them, I feel like we should record them because they're
I
so
know,
good.
exactly.
So, I'm Irina Mihaela, and I'm dubbed Entrepreneur Enlightener. I really hope everybody seeks enlightenment and progresses through to enlightenment. I'm a business advisor, an energy healer, and most recently, an equine person that helps youth with the horses to find their freedom, find their empowerment, and even develop their leadership and entrepreneurship skills.
Yeah, there's so many areas. I mean, we could probably have multiple conversations like this, just covering all the different segments. And so I was kind of beforehand, I like to sit and think about the person that I'm going to talk to and what are some of the conversation pieces or topics that I would like to get into. And my head was like all over the place. I was like, oh, I want to talk about this. So I'm just going to take a few different things and we'll see what happens. But obviously the horse piece is definitely going to come up because that's really cool. But I know, and I know that we've talked about it before, you have a really amazing journey, kind of both professionally and personally, of the steps that you took to get to where you are. And I don't really think it's necessarily that you pivoted as much as you layered on top of it. Like, I think the engineer part of you still very much is present in the things that you do right now. So I thought maybe could you talk a little bit about like what initially made you interested in engineering and then made you kind of realize, and I know, but not necessarily the audience, what then made you kind of realize, okay, I want to do something different with this, but the engineer is still there.
Yes. So I grew up in Romania, and when you finish high school in Romania, like at my time, you were expected to go to a university. So that was like an expectation. And let's say 80% of the children would go to an university. And maybe the 20% that wouldn't go, they are like the loser and the failing ones, like to go
Mm,
and be a worker. But that was like the standard in Europe at that time, in Romania.
right.
So then you go to a university, and we had engineering, law, and medicine. Like that was like three things. And I think there was like languages or art. But there was no psychology at that time. I just want to say that because if that would have been an option, maybe I would have chosen it, but I didn't even know that that's my calling. So then engineering was the path. And then you go, what do I want? Mechanical engineering, this, that, da, da, da. At that time, I had a boyfriend that took electronics. And electronics was the top, like the hardest university of all in the technical. And
Interesting.
before my time, like I think 4 years before, they didn't even accept women in electronics.
Wow.
So I don't know if it was the stubbornness in me or that I want to prove that a woman is as good as a man or that I have no trouble. I don't, I, a combination of those factors that I applied to this, like the highest and the most difficult to enter university program.
Interesting. So I don't know that I knew that piece. It's interesting that part of what drove you may have been the obstacles as opposed to the interest. Although for me, when we talk, I can see like the engineering, and that, I want to say that every engineer thinks the same way, but there's some principles that are used when you're kind of scientifically thinking through things. And I think it's so cool how you take the scientific, mathematic principles, if you will, right, and apply those to the psychology of it. Because at the end of the day, it's all about foundations. You have to know this before you know this, right? And that's the same thing with what you do with teaching people how to understand and discover themselves. Are there times where you find yourself doing things that kind of bring you back to the engineer role, like the way that you solve a problem, even on your
I
day-to-day
always
basis?
I always do. So when somebody has something and they want to work, or they want my advice on something, or they want to work with me, I first define the problem. That's what the engineer does. What is the problem we're solving? Because we cannot start solving a problem if we don't understand what the problem is. So that's, and also like I was in design engineering in nuclear, and we always started the design with the design requirements, like what is this thing that we're designing supposed to do. So I always ask for preparation. So whoever works with me, for whatever reason, I ask for preparation. What's the problem? What's the intention? What are we doing? What are we solving? Because when you ask a business question, like what's the next step in my business, it's so vague. Like what are we
Mm,
trying to achieve, like in your business? Like, are we
right.
growing? Are we, like, what is it that we are looking for the end goal in order for us to solve the problem? And this is where I tell people, like, don't just follow random advice on the internet. Like, no, what is it that you want? What is it that your next step? So defining the problem is the first engineering step.
Right.
And I feel like everyone who does that already has an awareness of, like, almost like half the problem is solved just by knowing what are we solving.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And you think about too, like I love that you mentioned the internet because I think that one of the things is too, and if you pick and you hear pieces of things and you don't apply the whole concept too, right? Like mindset is a lot, and you do want to go with your gut and you do want to trust your intuition. But to your point, before you start doing any of that, like what is your goal? Is it that you feel physically tired and you want to feel less tired? Is it because you're financially struggling? You're right. Before you get into the understanding your intuition, you just need to figure out what it is that you're saying is the actual issue. That's really cool. And I've seen you both give that as advice, and I've seen you do it in your own business. I mean, when you think about the different things that you've done, and I don't necessarily want to call them pivots because again, I think it's all part of this journey and it all fits together. And probably when you were on it, you would not have necessarily imagined you were going to be at this place that you're at, or maybe you did. But looking back, you can see how all of those different things fed into each other and how they did it. And I think, just even times when I've had conversations with you about different decisions I'm making, and I've watched that principle, and I think we do tend to want to kind of go right into solve mode before we can get there. And I did project management. It's the same thing. You've got to know what is your goal here.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, and we'll come back to kind of some of the business stuff because I do want to do that, but I don't want to miss the opportunity to dig into this beautiful. I just want everybody to know about what you're doing with the equine experience and the motivation behind it. Before we even get into Amore, our beautiful horse that's just amazing in every way, let's talk about your heart for this and the driving principles into just the program in general. And then we'll talk about the horse component of it. But you're feeling that there are people knowing that there are children that are struggling from traumatic experiences, and that in order for them to live their best, most productive, most content and peaceful lives, they need to be able to work through that. I just kind of want you to I want people to hear from your voice why that's so important to you. Because when you say it, it's said in a way that you feel it.
Yes. So I grew up and I had a lot of abuse in my childhood. But one of the most hard, because I'm an empath, like I feel people and I want everybody to be happy. Like It's something that I can't explain. Like, I cannot see people suffer. So it was very hard for me to watch like my family suffer and not be able to do something, not be able to make them happy, if you may, although I know we cannot make other people happy. And also when I think back at me, like how much I suffer with thinking I'm good for nothing, I'm not worthy, you know, all the labels that were put on me, and the fact that I was rejected and in a sense like abused, like, you know, like anybody can do whatever they want because I mean nothing, or like my wishes, my desire mean nothing. And then when I look in the world right now and I see people suffer, like I see, so like I hear, even when I work with my business clients, you know, I also work a little bit on the family side. So I saw that what I thought as I grew up, I thought I'm a unique case, and you know, like I'm like my life was terrible. I see that is so many people are suffering. And sometimes it's because some sort of misunderstanding also between the parent and the child, different viewpoints. And it's hard when you're young. I cannot, I am looking at myself when I was 14 and I'm thinking, how did that girl knew to keep going when she was abused, she was criticized, she was beaten, she was thrown on the street? Like, how can she still go? And I feel blessed because I feel I was surrounded by angels. I feel I was guided. But not everybody can keep their spirit strong. So when and this thing with the horse, it came to me like it's part of my destiny. It's not me designing it on a paper and thinking, what should I do next? It was in my heart. I fell in love with this type of horse in 2010 at a show out of nowhere. I didn't go there to fall in love with horses. So everything was in my heart and I was guided. And now when I can offer this to youth in a way that they can come and have an experience. So I'm not coaching them, I'm not counseling them, I'm not fixing them in any way, shape, or form. I am allowing them to have an experience, and I observe and I share with them, and I share with the parent as well. They can come to a new understanding, like almost like going back to the engineering. I show them the logic, and then they go, oh, okay. So it's not that I'm doomed, or it's not that we can't have a relationship. It's because we misunderstood certain things. And now with a new understanding, we can think and maybe form new habits or interact in a different way.
Yeah, you're empowering people to be the solution, right? To see the victory that they already have just in their very being, and to, correct. I don't want to say correct the story. The story is very real and but the message that they interpreted from that, like you're saying, like, oh, I can do this. This isn't. I'm not a failure. I'm not worth nothing. And that's really what
New perspective. I like to say it's a new
perspective.
perspective
Yes.
because you cannot act on something you don't see, like you don't know. So you act on what you know, but that poof, a new perspective, then you say, okay, new perspective. Let's think about this. Let's take this into consideration and see how we can change or shift or do different.
Yeah, and you know what you were saying before too about how when you're in the experience, and you don't necessarily understand, like from your childhood, right? Like I can remember, like I knew that I didn't like what was happening. I knew that I was upset and that I was struggling, but I didn't have the words for it. We've come a long way with mental health, so that was a part of it, right? I mean, I was definitely dealing with some post-traumatic stress, but also anxiety and depression. But it was then, like, I remember, sporadically different things would happen. I'd hear somebody say something and think like, oh, that's not normal. That's not the way it's supposed to be. But because it's just been your identity, you do start to internalize it. And when you recognize that, like, okay, this isn't the way things are supposed to be, and then you start to realize that what for you was just survival, but really is this gift that you're going to be able to give back to other people, right? Like, I'm almost eager sometimes when I hear that somebody is going through depression to share with them that I struggle with that, because I want them to know, like, I get it, and it's awful and it's really hard, but you can do this. So that gift that we can give people and showing them that, that we've been through that, though everybody's experience is unique. And really what you do with youth with the equine experience is a lot of really what you were talking about, like with businesses too, because many times the obstacles we're facing, whether it's as an organization and the organization's got blockers, or it's individually as a leader that you're hitting blockers, right? I know you work with a lot of executives. It's what is the way that we're looking at it and needing the new perspective. So whether it's youth who've been through a traumatic experience, an executive who feels like they're not a good communicator, an organization that is, people are leaving left and right and they can't figure out why, we're first going to use your engineering, skill, which is, okay, what is it that we need to solve for here? And then the next thing is, what is the perspective that you're viewing that in? And how can we adjust that? And because of that, you become part of the solution for it, which is just cool, because then it's going to stick, right? You can't be with everybody all the time. That'd be cool if everybody had Irina sitting by them going like, hey, wait, but they don't. So you empower people to use that mindset. What are some of once you get the baseline, which is, okay, what's the problem we have to solve for? What are, maybe one or two of the key questions that in general you ask people to consider in terms of moving forward with next steps and getting past some of these blockers?
Yeah, so the one of the very first thing is also for people to understand themselves, like who they are, what is their brilliance, what's unique about them, as you said, even their story. Because another part of why I'm so passionate about this is because the more people share their story, as you said about you, the more we normalize it, and then the more people will look for help and support and talk about
Right.
what their suffering is. So I help people see, youth or adult, see what's their unique brilliance, like what is that they are good at. What I don't want to give example like somebody that came here, but what is it that person is passionate about? And because like for me, when I grew up and I was told you're good for nothing, right? So I was like constantly say like your life will amount to nothing, you're good for nothing, nobody will marry you, whatever, all the like blah blah blah. So I think something that kept me going is, what am I good at? So one of the things I'm good at is that keep going. That's one of my gifts.
Resilience. Yeah.
Resilience, right? So when we can help anyone to internalize, okay, maybe I'm not good at this, but what am I good at? Those are the things. And if we can find like 3 things, and that person knows that whoever abuses them or yells at them or whatever gets fired or whatever happens in a company, if they can turn inside and say, okay, maybe those things are that, but I know this about me. I know this about me. So to have something that nobody can take away from you, like that knowingness inside, then no one can take away from you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, there's so much there. I'm actually I got goosebumps when you were talking, thinking about like the multiple applications of this across our entire world. When you were noting before, and you started to get emotional, and I did as well. The hurting, I'm gonna now too. So that's a sensitive thing for me too. The thought that there are people hurting, and that to some degree, limited isn't the right word, but we can't help everyone individually. We don't have that capacity, right? If we could, you and I would be sprinting around the world trying to, and a lot of other people would be as well. We don't have that capability. But what we do have is to help spread messages about what you just said, right? Recognizing that you've got gifts and you've got passions. People will say, I've had conversations with people and they'll be like, but what's special about me? And it's like, even when you take apart the passions and the gifts, what's special about you is you're you. You're you. There is no other you in the world. then we can build on that, right? When you recognize that there's nobody who's going to replace you, this world is not going to be the same without you. You matter by the very nature of your being. And so when we build upon that and we go, okay, now let's talk about, we already know you're a miracle and you're incredible. What do you like? What are some of the gifts? And you're right, everybody has them. And we all have some degree of resilience, whether we are surviving the same level of circumstances or having had to maneuver through things. When people feel like, I can't do this, this is too big, if you look back at your life, you will see these other, what could be deemed insurmountable obstacles, and you overcame them, right? When I think about you would not be able to deliver the message in the same way had you not gone through what you went through. I hate that you went through that from an emotional, like I want to go and I want to hug, I want to hug you now too, but that experience, I know, that experience allows you to be able to truly and fully breathe into existence the message that you want people to hear, which is you are so worthy, right? And that's important whether you're a youth struggling or, again, an executive leader, whatever circumstance you're encountering, you are so worthy.
What? Yeah. And I like, I like what you said, that you're sorry that I went through it. But on the other hand, I wouldn't be able to help because, for example, like I helped a parent for a youth that was traumatized, and I explained a bit the PTSD. So because that person never experienced, like the parent never experienced trauma as a child, they didn't understand. Like, just to, for example, like when I, not now I heal myself, but I couldn't have two musics in the house. Like I couldn't have the radio there and another, because it would just overload my system. That's a PTSD symptom. So when I explain this, that the child, like, it gets overloaded, then the parent like never experienced that, so they didn't know. So I couldn't have made a difference in explaining that, again, in a very engineering way, if I didn't have suffered with that. So I think if we can put the suffering to a purpose, then we can give a gift to the world. And that's why I always, like, I teach people how to set up their purpose-driven business. Like, if we can take the pain and turn it into a blessing, then we know it was not for nothing, and we can serve the world.
Yeah, absolutely. That story, that struggle that we went through becomes fundamental to our being forward. And that's also gives you back strength that when you were in that circumstance, right? When you were going through abuse, when I was going through abuse, in those circumstances, you do feel powerless, particularly as a kid. I mean, by nature of childhood, there's a degree of powerlessness because we do rely on other people. And then you add those dynamics to it. And we grow up, but we don't ever leave that little child behind. They're still in there. So that child's still kind of trying to work through those feelings. And when we're able to say, hey, I'm going to help someone with that, it gives you power that just carries throughout it. And I share that same kind of notion that, like, you're right, when you take the struggle, the circumstance, and you turn it into something that's going to help other people, it becomes almost beautiful, right?
Yeah.
It becomes a beautiful part of the tapestry, which is who we are as individuals. And I think the fact that, and I would love for you to share a little bit about it, as much as you fell in love with that horse in 2010, you also had some fear. And I think, horse, I mean, I just think they're incredible. It's just something about their eyes or presence. And I've had experiences with helping people with horses, not on that level, but I think you were healing yourself to some degree too, with working with Amore and the grace that he provides in his existence. Maybe could you talk a little bit, if that's okay? Would you mind talking about how you had that fear, but you worked through it?
Yes. So I had a fear of things bigger than me because my father was bigger than me and my father beat me up, right? So and as you said, as a child, you feel powerless. So I felt powerless to this thing that was bigger than me and hurt me, right? So I grew up, what I took when you were talking, like, in order to not feel powerless, I became very feisty and angry as a teenager. So I was like, you're not going to tell me what to do. So I became that feisty. But in the back of my mind, there was that fear of things bigger than me. And now a horse is bigger than you. So when I was trying to decide how to reinvent my life, because I kind of hit a low point, like my marriage wasn't working the way I wanted. Like I just felt like something needs to shift. Like I was like, something needs to shift. And I had this awareness that I'm afraid of things bigger than me, because even building a business that is bigger than you, or like building a vision that is bigger than you. Like I managed big in my corporate career, like I managed a big division, but my business, I think, was also like, do I grow it? It felt bigger than me. Then this program was bigger than me, and I had it in my heart, but nothing was materializing. So I went to someone I knew, like it's almost like a friend of mine, but she's a horse therapy, and she has like 7 or 8 horses. So I went and I said, like, I want to overcome the fear of things bigger than me. So I bought myself for my birthday a full day or a half a day with this coach horsewoman with horses. So I went there, we talked, and then she took me to the paddock. It was January, because I'm born in January, was my birthday. And there were 2 horses at the fence, and she was telling me how they are responding to me and what they're telling me. And she said, okay, let's go in. And I said, oh no, I'm comfortable here. It was the fence. I'm comfortable here. I'm not going in. And she says, but like, you paid to come and work with the horses. I said, yeah, but I'm working. Like, the fence was there. And she's a very good coach, bless her heart. It's like me. It's like, it doesn't let you off the hook until you do the thing. And she says, like, you didn't pay, and you wanted to experience, like, you have to go in. And a few days before, I read something on internet. It's like, I didn't come this far to only come this far. So that thought came to me, like, I didn't come this far, and I put an investment, and I invested my day, and it was freezing cold as well. So then I went and I talked to myself. So I said, give me a moment. I went to buy a tree, and I said, like, I don't want to do this. I didn't come this far to only come this far. So I remember my Tony Robbins training. Like, say yes, yes, yes. And so I pumped myself, like I grounded myself. I jumped on the ground to pump myself, because I really didn't want to go in. And I was afraid. And it was 7 horses at liberty. So they were not like and I was afraid. So I went in, and one horse came and stood by me the entire time, and none of the other horses could come. And it was such a moving experience. Like, this being understood I needed protection. Like, those are free roaming horses. They could do anything they wanted. And this one horse came and stood like me, and there were the other horses in the field, and stood there and was just like dozing off, like calm energy. And I was able to feel so joyful and happy. And what the coach did, she said, oh, I need to go to the barn. Are you okay if I leave you here alone? Of course, I think she was like trying to empower me
Strategy. Sure,
and
sure.
strategy. But I was left there. She went to the barn, which was not too far, but I was left there with this horse that was dozing by me. The other horses were curious and were trying to come in, but this horse just protected me like the whole time. And then I understood. So I felt this energy of that it's not necessarily that something bigger than you will hurt you. Something bigger than you can also protect you. I know. And then she asked me to give the horse a hug, and I gave a hug, and I cried like crazy. Like it was the first time ever I hugged the horse, and like that. And I cried like crazy. So then I left that, and then by May I decided to leave my marriage, and I decided that I am going to carry on with this path, because I had this path, but this requires like to have an equine facility, to have horses. There is a lot of effort to be put on, and my partner at that time, it felt like I'm asking for too much movement, too much activity, too much stuff, and he had done a lot of work to get to where we were at that time. So it wasn't fair for us. Like I wanted in my heart, and I wasn't fair to kind of try to push somebody into something they didn't want, but I couldn't give up on my dreams and my passion. So that's when I overcame the fear of things bigger than me. And when Amore, because you asked the question, so I followed my path. Okay, so I found the equine facility, and then 1 month later, not even, then this perfect horse at the perfect time arrives, like on the market, like in front of me. And the only thing I could say was yes. It was like no other question. So then he arrives. I didn't have like a lot of people like supporting, because I didn't have time to organize, and I was new in the area. So I was left with him, and at first everything was nice and dandy. But then I think he started to want to establish who's the boss, right? Because that's what they do. When he first came, he was like, where am I? Let me be in my best behavior. But after a couple of weeks, he said, oh, maybe I'm the boss. So he kind of started to push me around a bit, which scared the berserks out of me. So now I have this horse. I don't have like people necessarily that will come and do the thing. I have to feed him. So I would hold my breath, go put the thing, and then come out and do the things that I needed to do, but with a bit of fear around me. So then I realized, okay, I need to first figure it out for myself before this goes and I'm supporting others. And what I understood very clearly is that he doesn't know he's bigger than. He only knows my energy. So if my energy is scared, then he feels he's the boss. If my energy is safe and grounded and like I'm the boss, then he respects that. And I'm an energy healer, so I know energy. So that was when I realized that. Actually, there was a friend of mine slash former client that came and did the energy. She's a horsewoman, so she came and did an energy healing on Amore, and I saw how well responded. That's when was my aha. Okay, I know energy. He responds to energy. If we align the energy, then we're good. So that's how I saw the fear, and that's how I now very comfortably working with him and other people when they come.
Yeah, I mean, first off, beautiful story of courage, right? And I'd heard bits and pieces of it, but not the whole thing there. Just and I think it's interesting. There's a thing that I use when I'm working with both individual and corporate clients of all different, right? I do this thing where I talk about embrace the change, embrace the resistance, right? So I should say embrace the resistance and resistance. So in this circumstance, right, for you, it was the fear. And obviously we're not always going to be able to confront all of our fears in the same way. But the idea being that in order to kind of be able to maneuver through something, we really have to look at it, right? We could talk about that as an engineering concept where we're saying, hey, matter of fact. We can talk about it from an emotional perspective, which is we have to honor the feeling in order to be able to maneuver through it. But that's what you did. And you literally, right, you embraced it. But I have found, and it's interesting that even when I'm doing something like maybe we're doing like a hardware rollout, right? Which sounds like, okay, there's going to be some uncertainty, but it's not a, a particularly emotional thing. But, and I had talked about this actually, in a previous conversation with somebody live, you would be amazed by the way people feel resistance to letting go of their hardware. They're like their laptops, for example, because of they know it. That's where everything, like I have everything in folders. It's exactly what I want. All very valid reasons. But I think there's also something deeper, more psychological that's going on there. And so when we, rather than me go, well, you're just going to do this. So here's what's happening. Give me your, but we talk like, okay, what are you worried about? Engineering, right? What is the problem here? Let's talk about what is the actual concern that you have and maneuver through it. And people will actually realize that there's many underlying things that are taking place that are making them reluctant. Like, is the hardware replacement part of, they're going to be changing the staff? Are they going to be laying people off? So all of these other messages are playing. And so for you, it wasn't about horses. It was about something bigger than you, than you physically, bigger than you metaphysically, bigger than you. And now when you bring, like you were talking about knowing what you feel, when you bring kids to the horse, all of these different levels that are there. And I know I don't want you to, we're at 36 minutes here, but if you could obviously not share any personal details, but maybe just about the experience, the visual experience of watching youth with the horse and what that's like to kind of watch somebody interact with Amore, knowing the healing that's taking place. Because you've posted some videos where the person's in the distance and I'm like, oh, that's so beautiful. So
Yeah.
I'd love to hear you talk about that.
Yeah. So, like one thing came to mind when you're talking, so I'm going to share that. So, it was a 10-year-old, and she never saw horses, but she loves animals. So, I was kind of apprehensive a bit. She stood there in the arena. The horse came, sniffed her, like not a blink, like. And I was like, afterwards, I congratulated her. Like I said, like, how come? Like, you've never seen a horse and he's free. So he doesn't have a lead. He's just totally free in the arena. And he comes and sniffed her, he comes and like connect. So I asked the 10-year-old, like, how were you not afraid, knowing that I used to be afraid? And she said, I felt he had benevolent energy and I wasn't afraid. So I thought, like, blew my mind.
Yeah,
10-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. Very much in touch there. I almost wonder sometimes like what the younger you, the youth you would have reacted to a horse if you'd had an opportunity earlier on, like it's an interesting dynamic. Obviously everything happened the way it was supposed to. You needed to go through that to have this adult coming to horses experience in order to be able to share that with other people.
But everyone's experience is different and is based on what they need. And that's why I call it an experience. Like, I don't have a preconceived concept of what one that comes to the horse would do. All I have, I'm a transformational coach, if you may, like I've done transformation with people. So all I do is I hold the space and I move kind of the what's happening, like, okay, now let's groom, now let's do, but in a fluent way that takes into consideration what's happening. So the experience part, I love that, because you're coming for an experience and one person experience is not like the other person experience. But as long as I see that the person had an experience, like, that's the win.
Yeah.
There was an experience.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to set the stage too, because then if you're not going into it with an expectation, right? Because as you said, people can feel what you're feeling. So if you've got in your mind like, oh, this is a specific expectation, then it creates it and makes it tight and rigid. And it's not supposed to be a tight and rigid experience. It's supposed to be like, let's just let this happen as it's going to happen. And I know that you've gotten some notoriety, local notoriety in your community as a result. I mean, people hearing about it, people are excited about it. I mean, I just know that a year from now, the conversation that we're going to be having about what will have taken place because of the momentum and the way that all of those things came together and the way you're so enthusiastic about it and sharing about it. You're very uninhibited and showing your raw emotion and excitement about it, which is how we should be, right? Like we should be able to dance with joy about things that are going in the right direction. And so you're sharing your little things as they go along, not little, you're sharing pieces of the story as they go along has been really neat to watch. Even just when you're standing in the field with Amore
Yeah.
rolling around in the snow, right? It's
And I want to say that this is still bigger than me, and it still intimidates me in some sort of way, like what I'm still building. So it's still bigger than me, and it's still like still requiring support and other people input and like community around it. So I'm not, although I got over the fear of things bigger than me, I'm not like super comfortable, I got it. So I am growing through it. I'm, as you said, 1 year from now, who knows the stories. And it's a process and it's a progress, and I wouldn't change a bit.
Yeah. Well, and I also, because we didn't talk about it, and I want to make sure we note this before we hop off. In addition to the youth equine experience, it's also part of what you do as a business coach with retreats, right? Because we all benefit from that kind of feeling, the just letting ourselves decompress and stuff. So that is something else that you offer that I do want to make sure that people are aware of, that
Yeah.
your connection with Amore and what Amore is bringing to helping people is pretty expansive.
Yes. And I had like a networking event and I took the people there. And again, it wasn't planned, it wasn't on the agenda. And we had like a meditation and they got a shift. I had an event that I said to myself, I'm not going to take people to the horse. But guess what? Somebody asked, can I do the horse? So we did. And the event was supposed to end at 8. And at 12 midnight, we were in the bar. So it's I think it's integral part of everything I do. I don't think I can separate it, and it just helps move things forward easier. As I said, the experience, I read somewhere a while ago that you cannot undo information. So once you got an awareness, you cannot say you didn't have it. So when you have the experience, it's already opening you up for the next step in your business, in your life, in your career, whatever you're seeking for. So I'm happy to offer both. And I think that's, it will become almost like one with the other. It will not be one
Right.
without the other.
Right. It's helping people be the best version of themselves that they can be, and see how amazing they already are, right?
Yeah, and
That's
leadership, like I learned leadership from him. That's a, like application for the business leadership, because you have to lead the horse to somewhere where you have to do those things. So everything you can think about of wanting to grow, wanting to go to the next level, I feel like the experience with the horse can definitely help. Yeah.
so how do people get in touch with you? If they want to connect with you, what is the best method for them to connect with you?
So I like my name, Irina Mihaela. You can search for it, LinkedIn, Instagram. Instagram, I'm Irina Enlightenment. And I think those are like, it's good on social media. Then from social media, we can connect further and know what we are. And my website is entrepreneurenlightenment.com.
One of these days, I think you're going to wake up and find that during the night, Amore made his own social media channel. He
I
started
was
posting.
somebody asked me about that. Somebody asked me about that, and it may evolve. I don't know, but for now we're kind of together. And I
Yeah.
post. If you look at my Instagram, there is the first video is about me doing a speech, like my keynote, and the next video is about More rolling in the field. So it's kind of like
It's
you get
yeah.
a picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was jesting, though that would be, either way that you do it. I think it's awesome that you're sharing your journey with people. And then your final message, though you certainly have packed a lot of it in so far. What would your final message that you'd like to share with everybody?
My message is heal. Take time to heal. Take time to understand yourself. whenever you feel like you're suffering or something is not right, search for healing. There are so many modalities these days. There's so much that you can do. Go on a retreat, uh, do whatever you need to do, but know that the childhood wounds, and even like some people grow in a beautiful family, but the expectations are big. So we all get somewhat traumatized in childhood, no matter what our parents are like. But hear that so you can reach the point where you know who is showing up in the world is your true self, a self that is not moping and suffering and feeling like not good enough, but a self that is luminous, expansive, that can shine despite not thinking what other people will say, that can be who you are. So that's my message.
It's beautiful. Yeah, heal.
Yeah.
Heal whatever needs to be healed.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. As always, thank you for this conversation. Thank you for joining me live, but thank you just in general for sharing some more pieces of yourself with me, for whomever joined us live, whoever's going to listen to this after the fact. As I say on each of these, I always know that at least one person is going to hear something that's going to really impact them in a positively way. Positively way. I'm not sure what that means. In a positive way. And so I just think that's amazing that we can get on and do a go live, and somebody somewhere in the world is going to hear something and it's going to change the way that they're viewing things. And that's just the at least one person who we may never know. We probably will never know the amount of people that are impacted each time we share our stories and encourage other people. So thank you. I hope that many people journey forth to heal, and I look forward to continuing to be connected to you and watch all the cool things that are going to happen.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for your great questions.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody who is live, and take care to those of you who joined us after the fact. We hope you have a great day.